4 creepy but true Craigslist stories. Number 4. The Fake Babysitter. Catherine Ann Olson had recently graduated from Minnesota St. Olaf College in 2007. She was 24 years old, and she was working part-time as a nanny while she was waiting for her career in theater to take off. Michael John Anderson was an avid paintball player, and he wondered what it would feel like to kill someone. He was only 19 years old. Anderson contacted Catherine by posing as a mother named Amy who was looking for a babysitter. Olson was delighted to take the job, and they decided to meet at 10 a.m. the next morning. Before leaving for the new job, Catherine apparently remarked to her roommate that she had a really bad feeling about the job, but she decided to go through with it anyway. Anderson met her at a run-down house in Savage, Minnesota. Together they walked upstairs to the bedroom. At that point, Michael Anderson pulled out a .357 Magnum and fatally shot Catherine. He drug her body downstairs and outside, and then he stuffed it into the trunk of his car. Then he drove the car several blocks away. Trying to destroy the evidence, Anderson crushed Olson's cell phone and wrapped it up in a bloody towel before dropping it into a public trash can. Apparently, he didn't know that he was using a towel that had his name on it. In 2009, Anderson was sentenced to life in prison without parole. Number 3. The Craigslist Killer. Philip Markoff is perhaps the most famous Craigslist criminal of all time. By the time he was caught, he was a second-year pre-med student in Albany. He and his fiancée Megan McAllister were both volunteers at the Albany Medical Center Hospital emergency room. He was a smart young man with a fiancée, and on the outside he looked like the picture of innocence. But he was living a double life. His first victim, Tricia Leffner, was bound, gagged, and robbed at gunpoint on April 10, 2009. 4 days later, Markoff responded to a Craigslist ad offering massage services posted by Julissa Brisman. Brisman was later found dead. Only 2 days after killing Brisman, Markoff attempted to rob Karina Stout, an exotic dancer who offered lap dances on Craigslist. 4 days later, the police finally caught up with Markoff. Using security cameras, cell phone data, and email accounts, the police had enough evidence to arraign Markoff on murder and gun charges. As the trial date grew closer and closer, Markoff became more and more desperate to escape the inevitable. He first tried to kill himself with his shoelaces, and he was placed on suicide watch after that. A few weeks later, he sharpened a spoon and tried to cut his own wrists. Finally, on August 15, 2010, only 1 year and 1 day after the date his wedding was to have taken place, Markoff was found dead in his cell. He cut himself and used his own blood to write the word "pocket" on the wall of his cell. Pocket was the pet name that he and his fiancée used for each other. Number 2. My Roommate, the Diamond Thief. In August 2003, Brian Boucher was falling behind on his bills, and he needed help to get back on his feet. So he got on Craigslist to find a roommate that will help him out with the bills. And that's where he met Don. On the surface, Don looked like the perfect roommate. He was neat and clean, he was often away from home, and when he came home, he tended to stay in his room and not make much noise. In fact, he was so quiet that oftentimes Belcher would think that he was home alone, only be startled by a door suddenly swinging open. 4 months into this stay, everything was going well. That is, until a strange incident happened in the apartment. Someone broke in and ransacked his roommate's room. The person that broke in didn't take any of the valuables that were around the house. The thief could have stolen thousands of dollars worth of valuables, but instead, the thief decided to spend his time ransacking Don's room. It seemed far too calculated. Things got weirder after that. Soon after, for the first time, Don was late on his rent. And even stranger, he hadn't heard from Don in several weeks. Assuming that Don had skipped town, Brian went into his bedroom and started packing his things. The room looked like Don hadn't been planning to leave. His things weren't packed, and there were molding bananas in the corner. On the bed, he discovered a manila envelope. When he opened the envelope, he saw scraps of torn up, pre-approved credit card offers, that were made out to Brian that Brian had shredded earlier. He also found papers with names, addresses, and phone numbers for all of his family members. Don had even collected his mother's maiden name and the date that his parents were married. Brian had to know more, so he started looking into Don's computer, and that's when he found out that Don knew all of his websites and passwords. But while he was in his computer, he found out that his real name was Dino Lauren Smith. After Googling his roommate's real name, he quickly learned that he was the prime suspect in a diamond heist. Dino and his brother Devin allegedly broke into a vacant restaurant that shared a wall with an antique and estate jewelry store. They then burrowed through the wall and disabled the alarms before making away with somewhere between $6 and $10 million worth of stolen jewelry and diamonds. 4 months later, the man claiming to be Don showed up in Brian Belcher's house. In June 2005, Dino Smith was convicted of 8 counts of robbery, false imprisonment, burglary, and conspiracy based on all the evidence that was found in his computer. Who ransacked Dino's room remains a mystery to this day. Number 1. The Killer Farmhouse. Have you ever looked for a job on Craigslist? Well, here's an example of job hunting gone horrifically wrong. Scott Davis, a 48-year-old man who had just gone through a breakup, was in desperate need for money. In 2011, he found a Craigslist job for house sitting in a rural area of Ohio that paid $300 a week. The ad was posted by a man named Richard Beasley. Earlier, Beasley had teamed up with a 16-year-old boy named Brogan Rafferty, who posed as Beasley's nephew. Together, they conspired to post fake jobs on Craigslist to lure innocent people to secluded areas and then murder them. House sitting was the perfect guise to mask their real plan. In fact, before Davis had responded to this ad, the team had already murdered 3 people using this same method. After being told that the position was very competitive, Davis was excited to hear that he had won the job. The 3 made their way out to the farm, turning down smaller and smaller roads until they were far away from civilization. Finally, they pulled up to an old farmhouse, but they didn't go in. Instead, they told Davis that they had accidentally left some equipment over the hill and asked for his help getting it. The 3 people walked deep into the woods until Davis didn't know where he was anymore. That's when he heard the sound of a gun hammer clicking. Davis got lucky when the bullet missed its target and instead hit him in the elbow. He scrambled through the trees, all while being pursued by his 2 would-be killers. After hours of scrambling through the woods and trying to find a safe house, Davis finally found a farmhouse where he could contact the police. The police tracked down Beasley and Rafferty in 2011. They were convicted of 3 counts of murder. Beasley was sentenced to death, while Rafferty, only being 16 years old, wasn't eligible for the death penalty. Thanks for watching. If you liked this video, make sure you hit that like button. And if you really liked it, make sure you subscribe for more great videos like this.
I swear to God.